And if we can please move to item 14, installation of public artwork, segments of Berlin Wall. You'll notice that we've got a set of words in front of us which talks about consents and approvals and maintenance and condition report, long-term maintenance engineering plans are provided. The one thing that's missing from this resolution, of course, is a location. So I imagine that's where this debate is going to centre. Maybe if I could just get some words of introduction from staff, first of all, and maybe some commentary on where this got to at the committee and where it's at today.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, we took it to committee, and there was some good debate on the siting of the artwork. And also a request to go back and check with a couple of groups of people to look at their opinions. One was the Victoria Square Reference Group. Now, while we didn't convene the group to talk to, we certainly got some good feedback from a number of members through the media and otherwise. But I would be interested to hear from Councillor Templeton today on her views as well. She was a member of that group. We also were asked to contact Ngāi Tahu, so we have done that through Matapopuri, and their comments here are that though we've looked at a number of sites with them, they thought that the pieces didn't necessarily fit well, and they were speaking in particular to Raora, but however, commissioning new artwork in the future from local street artists might help them to connect to the sites and to anchor them down. And bearing in mind that the way these artwork are being cited, they can be moved around in the future as well. The other additional information that we were asked to provide, which we have done so, and thanks to Kerry, is went away and looked at additional sites and did quite a comprehensive site analysis on a number of factors, which has also been supplied to you, and just looked at a number of things as to why we think it might fit into an area, but Kerry might be able to expand on that a little bit more. Thank you.
Oh, tēnā koutou, so I'm happy to answer questions as I can. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare the matrix, but did have a look at a range of sites, and we had explored these prior to making an initial recommendation around the area just near the Floral Clock and Town Hall. But we obviously went back and see some strong opportunity around Raora Park, bearing in mind that Matapopuri had developed a narrative, I guess alongside Otakaro Limited, in developing that East Frame area, and they would have an interest in us seeing the works in the future, having some connection to that narrative, as well as telling some of our stories through those artworks.
I think just and it does mention in the report about the timing of it, but the current artwork on there was not original. It was done in 2014. Yeah.
Commissioned as I think there were community projects, so various community organisations in Berlin invited to paint segments of the wall.
All right, so no further commentary from staff.
No, happy to answer questions.
I would normally ask for the chair of the relevant committee to make some comments to introduce the item. Phil, do you have any commentary on this? I mean, as we've heard, there's more information which is being provided now than was available to the committee because of the work that you asked to be done. As chair of the committee, did you have any comment that you wanted to make at this time?
Thank you, Andrew. I do. I think one of the things about the decision today, it needs to be clear, this doesn't have to be a permanent installation forever. In fact, it can be temporary for as long as council would like to be there. And I think what Kerry referred to, that other artworks coming in to the Raora area could certainly enhance the Berlin Wall part. So I think too it's important that today we actually do make a decision. The wall has been moving around forever and a long time, and it's not necessarily an easy decision, but I think the matrix gives us a good pointer to Raora Park, Raora and the Litchfield area, and it'll be, I think, understand at the Cashel Street end of that green space. stands up the best among what the staff have selected.
All right, thank you very much for that. So now let's move to some questions. Tim.
Thank you. Look, just a couple of quick ones. In the original report, although it was said verbally that it could be moved around, the report made it very clear the permanent installation in that area. So if we could make that clear that it is able to be moved, because anywhere that it goes, and obviously I made it very clear in the original committee meeting that I was totally opposed to Victoria Square or the surrounds. So that's the first question. If we can somehow word that in this report that it is able to be moved. Because
You could recommend that we take the word permanent out of them.
Yep. If that's okay with the chair, that's
Well, nobody's moved this as yet.
okay. I'll just go into the second question, and it's probably the most important one, is where is it, can you just confirm where we're proposing to take it now?
So the Cashel Street end of that section of Aroora Park between Litchfield and Cashel Street, it's slightly mounded. What we've done in looking at that end in preference to the other is not preventing any community events on the green spaces there. It still leaves that space quite open, and it's also not disrupting or in the view of the residential properties that are being constructed along that part of Raroa.
And we're going to put the actual site where we're siting it on this.
I don't know, it's in the attachment.
So for the purpose of clarification, just for the purpose of clarification in the context of the report that's in front of us, are we hearing that with the new information which has been presented, there's a new staff recommendation, which is Raroa Litchfield 2 potential sites, so the second column in Appendix B,
Correct.
the southernmost of those two sites shown in the picture.
Southern or northernmost?
It's
The Cashel Street
the
end.
Cashel Street end.
So that's the northernmost of the two sites shown in the picture.
Correct.
Okay. So when somebody's ready to move something, we'll need to make sure that what they move is specific enough that it's capable of being understood and implemented. So further questions? Aaron.
Yeah, so in the decision matrix we've got with the 5 locations, Litchfield at Raroa, Cashel at Raroa doesn't seem to be on there.
Oh, it's the topmost orange box. We just clustered the sites because the discussion would be essentially the same around both of them, but just noting that there's the
So it's
potentials.
It's
Under
Cashel-
number 2,
The top orange box and
It's the Cashel to Litchfield block.
so it's the second one, the Raroa Litchfield one that we've got.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So second column, northern site. Any
And-
further questions? Aaron.
So how far apart from each other they're going to be?
the original proposal in the Victoria Square area was fairly close east-west orientation. I think the early conversations talked about the potential for people to be able to slide between the two pieces. I'm not sure if that will remain the case in this site, but fairly close.
So just confirming the east-west, so because the thing runs north-south,
Yeah.
that it's facing sideways. So
Yeah.
one side of the wall's east, one side's west.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions. Okay, does somebody want to move something? Dion.
Yeah, I'll just move move this and move that we put it in the rural Litchfield Cashel side.
Yep, so what we've got is agree to the installation, we've removed the word permanent, of the 2 Berlin Wall sections at Raroa, Cashel to Litchfield Street. So that's the description of what we just described, column 2, northern site, subject to the following, and that's the same wording that was there before.
Cashel to Litchfield Street, northern location.
Yeah, maybe brackets, northern location.
Yes.
Close bracket.
Yeah.
Yep. Just
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that it's absolutely clear what we mean.
Yep.
And what we know is from the answer to the question, which has been asked twice in 2 different ways, that it's the second column in Appendix B, the northern site shown in that picture.
Yep.
So we're making that very, very clear. All right, so Dion's moving this. Do I have a seconder? Vicky will second. Is there any debate on this? Yanni?
Thank you. Although I appreciate the sentiment behind getting something that is fairly historic and has a huge part of history, global history, I cannot support the Berlin Wall going into the East Frame. For those of us who were around, particularly when the emergency powers were being granted from central government and at the expense of local democracy, those of us will recall that there were many comments made regarding the most extraordinary powers outside of wartime, and if not greater than in wartime, that central government was granting itself with very little input. In fact, one comment in the Parliamentary Select Committee was a local MP asking, so the elected officials of the Christchurch City Council have had zero input into the draft. The answer was correct. And the chair said, okay, thank you. I think the point has been well established. We don't need to continue it. It just shows you that, you know, actually the history of the city, in terms of the central city dictatorship post-earthquake, of what happened to us, particularly with things like the blueprint and the central city plan, mean to me that the context of putting the Berlin Wall here is just not something that I can support. I just find the idea that the government would gentrify the eastern frame, and if you look at the lack of investment into the inner city east, going towards Fitzgerald and into Linwood Village, and you contrast that to the money being spent on the eastern frame going back into town, it's just completely the wrong message that putting the Berlin Wall there sends to a community. So I won't be supporting this location. I appreciate the work that's gone in. I think the context is just not appropriate for our city, particularly with what we've been through.
Aaron?
While I respect Yanni's opinion, I don't completely agree. My preference was Cathedral Square. I think there's a great synergy with the library, the centre of learning. But the coming down of the Berlin Wall, in a way, was a compromise. It was a changing of the world, and it was quite an amazing time, actually. And I absolutely thank Vicky for her work that she's done in securing this and bringing it to the city. I think it has huge relevance to part of the history. You know, a lot of New Zealanders died during World War II and what came afterwards and stuff. So it was that we do have a big connection to this. It's in the same parallel of city blocks that is the Fireman's Memorial is just further up the road, which comes from 9/11. So I think I'm willing to compromise on this and not have it in Cathedral Square and support what's been moved, because I think there is a strong message there. The young people growing up in our city should know what the Berlin Wall is and was. It was certainly a big thing when I was a kid. I always wanted to go there. Don't need to now. I can save my carbon footprint and just go to Raiora and see it. So, yeah, thanks, Vicky.
Phil?
Thank you. I have to say I disagree with Councillor Johansson's comments. The emphasis on the whole pieces of wall is it's part of what was taken down. The wall was taken down and people struggled for a long time. It was people power which actually overcame that whole authoritarian regime. And I think it can certainly signify a lot of things to a lot of people. But what's important is that this year it's the 30th anniversary since the wall came down. And it's important that, in fact, it has a place in our city. And I think it is good that we have it, and that other artwork in this area could enhance that. Equally, it may, as I said at the beginning, this doesn't have to be a permanent location forever. But in fact, I think it's really important for us to mark what did happen in Germany, how Berlin was divided, and how such huge suffering was caused for families, just like we had in our city during the earthquakes. So there's a lot of parallels there, and I think it's really important to mark it. And this actually is a time when it's a symbol of democracy and freedom, not authoritarianism.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you. Although I landed on an option at the committee level, personally it's taken a bit of processing over this, and I've consistently asked the contextual question why, and I can't make the ends meet. So I'm just signalling I'm going to be voting against this because location to me is not relevant in this debate. I've been to the Berlin Wall, as several of you have yourselves, but I cannot, and that's part of the reason for voting against this, but I also cannot find a contextual fit for Christchurch. You'll see that in the matrix, evaluation matrix itself, where for every potential location it says no direct relationship. So you may be inclined to say there's some kind of architectural relationship vis-a-vis being perhaps brutalist, but in terms of the symbolic, the meaning, that connection, for me it's too thin. I can't get it to connect up. Ironically, there is a phrase in German, Sitz im Leben, and it actually means setting in life. It's the context, the contextual question which you need in order to make a proper contextual interpretation. I do see that, as actually Aaron has mentioned, with the Firefighters Memorial, but I can't see it here. So I just can't support this in any form.
Any further debate on this? Sarah?
Thank you. It's, I've got to say, a little bit disappointing that we have got to this point without actually hearing from the Victoria Square Reference Group, who the committee made a resolution to ask. And it's the first time that, as chair of that group, I've had a chance to speak on this. The original placement of Victoria Square was inappropriate. And it's fair to say that there was significant public debate and frustration about the original Sarah plan for Victoria Square. And when I was Hagley Ferrymead board chair, the community fought to have consultation on it, and I was asked to chair the community reference group as Sarah went through the process. I did that on the condition that everything we did would be public instead of behind closed doors. We held Sarah to the results of the feedback, which was not an easy task, and I think that everyone's pretty happy with the result. However, what was crystal clear was that any changes to Victoria Square without consulting the public would be very poorly received by the public. And I can't believe that we went through a process that led us to that point at a committee meeting. Grant Edge, one of the original landscape designers for the 1987 design and member of the reference panel, is also clear and has been in the media, but I don't think actually asked in person, that the original proposed Victoria Square site was completely inappropriate. And the feedback from a prominent local architect also calls the comments about the link to the brutalist buildings entirely inappropriate. I think a lot more background work had to be done on this before it had gone to the committee. It's also a very long bow to draw an analogy between government powers post-quake and the division of an entire country. The message from these pieces of wall is one of transformation, one of a return to democracy, and one of learning from history. And if Councillor Livingston doesn't get the context of that, then I'm really disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy and then David. Jimmy.
Yeah, I support this one because I just want to remind all our fellow councillors after the kind of mosque attack event, you know. Before that, our city, we kind of even there's the tangible, intangible war, even person to person, group to group, community, etc. But after this event, this city show us, full of love, full of care, full of the solidarity, and also full of the political support. And also, I would like to remind our fellow council, at a council meeting on 28th of March, we particularly emphasize this city community is a kind of city of the peace, and also this city is a city of inclusion. But these two pieces of the world, there's a gift, from the Germany, those business construction firm. They actually is broken this wall. There's very, very significance. And so if we emphasize, we confirm, this city is a city of peace and the city of inclusion. But if we still concern, some of the issues, I don't think so. We have kind of broaden our mind, to receive this gift. This will be very crucial for us. So I just want to, remind our fellow councillors, so I support this one.
Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. There are actually two things here. One is the placement of the wall and one is the wall. First, with regards to the placement of the wall, if you can remember back when Otakaro first came to us with their wonderful plan for Victoria Square, it was hideous. And I would go far as to say bloody hideous. And that is where the Victoria Reference Group, the Victoria Square Reference Group, was formed in absolute protest in reaction to that plan. And so it was a bit of a shame that they hadn't been contacted prior to it, because I just think the placement of these two pieces in Victoria Square is the last place for me that they should be. But then going to the pieces of the wall. No, thank you.
Okay, let's
Phil.
continue.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks for the interruption there, Phil. However, moving forward, the pieces are actually important. It was a 155-kilometre wall, so there's plenty of pieces for it. There were 300 watchtowers, but it was about oppression, separation and violence. And they now stand for liberty. That is the key message, that these pieces of the wall are all over the world. They're at universities, they're in even metro railway stations, they're at art galleries. Microsoft even has a piece at their home offices. So it's about the placement of these important pieces for what they stand for. And I think that we've actually got to the right place. It's taken a while, and I would love to see them up there. Keeping in mind that they can be repainted, and I'd love to see our young people every few years to each schools or whatever they are, university students, whoever, have a crack at repainting what's relevant to them at the time, because they are our future. We do have to look backwards, but they stand for liberty. It's about the placement. I think we've got the right place, and it'll be good to see them keeping alive with input from our young people. Cheers.
David.
Thanks. When this project was first mooted, I really did struggle and think, why do we actually need a piece of the Berlin Wall in Christchurch? And I've really struggled with it for quite some time. I don't always agree with Glenn, but today I am going to. And I do just find, looking at the matrix, all of them make the comment here, no direct relationship to the area that they're going to be installed in. So whilst I'm a supporter of artwork in the city, I did really struggle with this particular art and its relevance to Christchurch, so I won't support the remit.
Anyone else? Vicky. I'll speak before you do, Dion. So Vicky, me, Dion. Okay?
Right. Just so you guys are aware, these were offered to Te Papa originally. Te Papa doesn't have a lot of outdoor space in the same way that Christchurch does. And so they were gifted to Christchurch. The freight from Germany was also gifted to Christchurch, in this case from South Base, the first one from German businesses. So these have been gifted, the freight has been gifted, they've been sitting in storage since 2017 out at Linwood. So nobody has been allowed to experience them or see them. I'm quite sure that the Berlin Wall will evoke different reactions in different people. I think it will mean different things to different people. Some people will like it, some won't. If we judged every installation, or because I don't regard this as an artwork at all, the art that's been put on there has been put on there very recently, and I also like the idea, particularly on one of them, of allowing young people or whoever to be able to repaint a chunk of the Berlin Wall. I think it involves that sense of inclusion. But the Berlin Wall didn't go up during the Second World War or anything like it. It didn't go up until 1961. And I agree with those people who say that the chunks of the Berlin Wall symbolise the taking down of barriers. I actually went through the Berlin Wall when it was there. It was terrifying. The other side of the Berlin Wall was an experience I'll never forget, especially as a young person going into East Germany with their huge guns, and all my magazines were confiscated because they were shameless things like Time magazine and things, and just the way and the contrast of lifestyles that was created by that wall. And then I remember the celebrations in 1989 that stretched worldwide when that wall came down, because people were climbing over it. People had been shot trying to get through that wall. That was a major symbol for people who grew up in that area of not being able to do the things that they knew to be right. And so taking down that wall in 1989, I remember it clearly, was absolutely powerful. The fact that people had achieved the destruction of a barrier that stopped them doing what they wanted to do was so powerful. I think it's amazing that we've been gifted some of these, and I don't like the idea that they were going anywhere near Victoria Square, but I do like where they're going in Raora Park. I walked down there with Kiri, and I think the location that they're going in, which has a major artwork behind it, it's the one that looks like that, is actually stunning. The bit closer, yes, that looks like that. I'll show you a picture if you like. The one that's closer to Litchfield Street has new houses built there, who may or may not love the Berlin Wall. I think the point of some installations is that they do provoke conversations. They do provoke different points of view, and people do bump into each other and have those conversations. I can see people taking selfies and all sorts of things down there and discussing it, and I think that's absolutely great. So here are some things that we've been given. Their current location by default is in storage. Now, our choice is to leave them in storage or to actually put them on public display so people can make up their own mind as to whether they like them or not. Some people will, some people won't. That's totally fine. That's true of every art installation. And I don't regard these as art at all. So I think this is an amazing opportunity. We've found a location that works, and I'd just love to get them out of there and in time for the 30th anniversary of the wall coming down. I think it'd be great for Christchurch.
Thank you. As someone that spent time in Germany both before and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, as someone who spent time in West Berlin when West Berlin was half of Berlin which had been split by the wall from East Berlin along political lines due to the way that Berlin was carved up at the end of the war, when West Berlin was an island in the middle of what was then East Germany, which was a separate country than West Germany. The Iron Curtain, as it was then called, which I saw on the border between Germany and Czechoslovakia after the when that was still very much there. The Berlin Wall, when it was put up, and it was put up overnight with no notice, top-down, authoritarian, split families, split communities, split a city with a huge amount of history and culture absolutely clean in two. It saw huge division. It enforced political division, which by itself was top-down. Freedom of movement was restricted. Freedom of people to socialise with their friends and families was not only restricted but prohibited, and people's rights were taken away from them. The fall of the Berlin Wall was an absolute representation, and of course this is more modern history and it's something that people are more aware of, was an absolute manifestation of reconciliation, of freedom, of liberty, of equality, bringing people together, unity, democracy and inclusion. And thankfully, these are themes that Christchurch is very, very familiar with and themes that we should celebrate. And in fact, themes that we're more familiar with in the last few months than perhaps we were prior to that. So whilst I initially had some difficulty with why we would want to put two pieces of the Berlin Wall in Christchurch, when you actually think about the symbolism, it makes a whole lot of sense why we would want to put two pieces of the Berlin Wall in Christchurch. I'm happier with the location that we've got proposed in front of us now than I was with some of the other locations that have been talked about, and I particularly note the comments that have been made about Victoria Square and the role of the reference group. So I'm much happier with this than some of the outcomes we could have seen. But in particular, I'm happy that this decision today will give the ability for these pieces of the Berlin Wall, which have been in the city for some time, which have been hidden from public view, to come into public view and provoke, through the historical context and the educational context provoke some of the discussions around why we should have them in Christchurch, and hopefully around some of the themes that I just talked about in the last couple of minutes. So I'm very supportive of us agreeing to this and getting on with it. Dion.
Well, I was going to close the debate, but I think everything that I was going to say has been said, and I really don't want to. I actually would just repeat everything that Vicky said, and I wanted to say thank you to Vicky for the amazing work, or the amount of work that you've done and enthusiasm to get this thing here, and also to the staff who have been working behind the scenes on this as well. But I did want to say one thing. I mean, this decision that we're making today has divided a number of opinions, but don't let that be a negative. Actually, let that be a positive. We're allowed to have different opinions. We're allowed to have different ways of looking at things. And this is what I hope this will actually provoke in our city. We have been through so much in Christchurch over the last 5, 6, 7 years, 9 years, I should say. But as a country, we've also been through a heck of a lot. And when, as a young person, when I was in the military and the Navy, we did a lot of warfare studies, and given that most of my warfare studies were done around Syria, we did look at the context of the German situation around World War II, and also the Berlin Wall. In the context of the hope that when that wall came down, what it meant to peace, and what it meant to liberation, what it meant to standing up to oppression. And yes, I mean, I believe what Councillor Johansson said is relevant in terms of that this city has seen oppression, has seen a lot of powers. The earthquake has split us. Thank you for the email that you sent us. But actually, let's look forward and look at the hope that the city can have, and the provocation, or the thought that we can have around this thing. So I do look forward to this, and I do look forward to the conversations that we will see. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I look forward to seeing those conversations and embrace them, and don't let those become a negative. So I'm very happy to support the location here, and just to get on with it.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Yep, so those that are noes, so Yanni, Glenn and Dave.